Today on the Becoming Unique podcast, I have such an amazing guest by the name of Greg. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
Yay. And I am so excited to hear all the juicy information you're going to have for us today because I love learning. But before we learn about today's topic, I would love for you to share with everyone who is Greg.
Yeah, this is, I love this question. It's open-ended. I usually try to be very concise as much as possible with this because you go off in tangents. But I'm an osteopath, exercise physiologist, and kinesiologist. I primarily deal with people that are suffering from what I call the functional illnesses, people with fibromyalgia, people with chronic fatigue syndrome, those type of conditions that the typical medical systems don't have a good track record of dealing with. So that's me. I was a former student athlete, played basketball at Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania. I did my osteopathy here in Canada. I live in Vancouver with my wife and 2 children.
Beautiful. Thank you. Right to the point.
Yes.
But I do have a question about your occupation, because osteopath, like I personally haven't heard of it. I can't wait for you to share what an osteopath is. What do you do? Like, could you break that down a little bit more so I can have more understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. So osteopathy was first, kind of discovered, or it was first kind of come into a profession in the early 1900s. The founder is called Andrew Taylor Still. He was a medical doctor that came in and learned a lot of alternate healing techniques of how to best help people, and primarily through various forms of manual therapy. In the United States, it developed into a medical degree. So you can be a allopathic doctor, which is classified by an MD, or you can be an osteopathic doctor, which is a DO, or both you go through medical school for. The kind of difference is that osteopaths have a little more hands-on type of training with manual therapy and tend to be more on the root causes of disease and illness, where the doctors in the allopathic side of things are typically more about symptom management and dealing when you already have a disease or you already have an illness. It's kind of and be able to manage that as best as possible. The rest of the world, though, it's a little bit different. So especially in Canada, it's more along the lines of like a physical therapist, I would say, where it's more about the manual therapy and management of conditions using that primarily as his intervention. So it's really big in Europe. In France, it's huge. I have a lot of friends that are from France, and anytime, even when they would be sick, whatever it be, they go see an osteopath, and it's big in Australia, and it's starting to grow in Canada. It came here in the 80s by a French individual that came and started a school up in Canada. And so osteopaths primarily deal with more of the complex type of conditions when it comes to around the chronic pain, the chronic fatigue, people that have suffering from really high stress lives, develop anxiety or depression in those type of areas. We definitely kind of focus on the functional illnesses.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So you kept saying manual therapy. So when you see a client or a patient, and you want to treat them, you're not going to treat them with a prescription, writing it down. You're going to treat them with your hands, like a physical therapist. Like,
yeah, it's a part of what I do. So I have a few different things that I have as a background, and one of those tools that I use is the tools that I've had as an osteopath. Just in Canada, it makes sense because osteopathic visits are covered by insurance, and so not our government insurance, but private insurance, so people can use that as just as a title to help kind of cover some of the costs. But overall, as we'll get into, there's many modalities that I use to be able to help people. I don't just use manual therapy, and that's all necessarily that I do. Is that we use multiple different things in our assessments of understanding of to where is the stress necessarily coming from? What are other areas of health and well-being outside of manual therapy that could be of benefit, whether that's physical activity, optimizing nutrition, looking at your sleep, stress management techniques. And I'm in a clinic downtown Vancouver where we surround ourselves with medical doctors, naturopaths, physical therapists, massage therapists, acupuncturists, all sorts of different allied healthcare modalities to work on these chronic conditions with individuals to really have the greatest success. Because if you have one lens in one area, you're not going to have a lot of success helping a wide range of people. But I try to open my eyes up to figure, okay, well, am I the right person for this person in front of me, or are there other people that may need to get involved?
Yeah, I love this because I love to always say there's not one magic blue pill. It's a lifestyle. You got it comes from so many different angles. You're not going to just go to the gym and lose weight. You got to match it with the way you eat and so on. So I absolutely love this. Now, one last question on this. Who would come to you? So like if I have a common cold, am I coming to you, or do I need to have okay, I'm suffering from, anxiety and depression, or, my body is hurting, or I have diabetes. Like who's coming to you?
Great question. Yeah, in the United States, osteopaths are again, you'd see someone for like that for a cold or an illness or whatever it may be. You do, because they have the ability to provide prescriptions and do typical medical allopathic medicine. Now, in Canada, people come see me typically because of more symptoms related to poor well-being than poor health. So poor well-being would be to the point that they don't have the same amount of energy. They're suffering from a certain amount of tightness into what's going on. And they go see the traditional routes of the medical doctors and well, we can't find anything wrong with you medically. Go see this person or that person. So we usually get involved as a secondary a medical system for individuals, and when they have more of these complex conditions. And so typical people that see osteopaths in Canada and around the world, it's usually around for these chronic conditions, pain primarily, that have been around for months, if not years, and they haven't had a really good handle on how to best improve it. And so that's usually where we get involved is people already have seen a physical therapist or a chiropractor or a massage as an individual, and those modalities haven't worked. And so they're looking for another thing. And so we provide services for typically those type of individuals.
Okay, so like functional medicine practitioner, where you dive deeper than just like the surface of your blood work says this and you're fine, you dive
exactly.
deep.
Yeah. So that's how I work, how we work at the clinic downtown is we try to comb through everything. We don't just think that our modality that we have is the ideal situation, and I sit back with individuals and look at their life as a whole and figure out where do we best need to go, and whether the focus on, we talk about the dietary side where we have tests and assessment to determine that. Is it the more exercise side where we assess and look at those things? So we try to prioritize people's health and well-being based on the factors that we feel are the low-hanging fruits, which I think typically most people, and especially in the medical system, do a very, very poor job of doing.
Yeah. And I love this. Okay. Yeah. Poor well-being. Like you think on your doctor's note, it may look like everything's all checked, but if you're like, you know what, I still just don't feel good, this is when they should definitely seek you out. Yes.
So how I kind of connect it all is I kind of ask people what is health, right? Because everyone wants to be healthy. But define what health actually is, and the definition of health is a complete physical, mental, and social well-being, right? A state of physical, mental, and social well-being. And then it goes to a point of, well, what's a state of well-being? What does that actually mean? When you talk about what's physical well-being, what's mental well-being, and what that is it's our ability to manage the normal stressors of life, to cope with the normal stressors. So it's our ability, well-being is our ability to cope with physical stressors of life. And then emotional well-being is emotional stressors of life, and look at those individually. So it really comes down to, poor stress management. And what's the resultant of poor stress management? Poor energy, pain, anxiety. These things are the warning signs that we have that our health is abnormal, which comes into that well-being. Our state of well-being has been affected. Yeah. And so that over time, if you ignore those signs of well-being, with a lot of type A personalities do, they try to, fine, just give me some more coffee, or I'll do certain things to kind of power through this. And then, the heart attack happens out of nowhere. When the grand scheme of things, it was out of nowhere. The warning signs were there. They were just suppressed and ignored.
Yeah, it's a quote that says, listen to your body when it whispers before it screams, or something to that extent.
That's a much better way of putting it. You're exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, so today's topic is HRV, and I know you focus a lot on HRV. And I can say in my lifestyle, in my community, whoever I'm speaking with, I'm not throwing around the term HRV. So, just as I was clueless, I'm sure there are other clueless individuals out there. So, what is HRV?
Yeah, so HRV stands for heart rate variability. So that's the term that's used, and this is used. Was popularized was more on the sports performance side of things than it was in regards to, but it's rooted in very medical. So I'll be able to kind of frame this nicely and kind of compare it to heart rate, because people know heart rate, 60 beats per minute, 90 beats per minute, and in all those areas. But if we look at two individuals and they both have a resting heart rate of 60 beats per minute, right? Not too bad. It's not high. It's not low. It's kind of in that kind of okay range, where individual number one has a consistent metronome-like heart rate, where it's on the second every second, where another individual has a varying heart rate, right? It speeds up and it slows down in this nice rhythmic pattern. And over the minute, right, they both have 60 beats, but the frequency of which those beats are different. What research shows is that the person with more variability is in a healthier, happier, well state than the other individual.
Wow. Okay.
This is what I
felt like I would guess the other one. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone, because that's the thing is we think of health as we call as homeostasis, or our ability to maintain a stable environment, of saying like, hey, we need our blood sugar to be this, or our heart rate to be this or that. Everything needs to be consistent. We need to have this nice normal repetitive number, where heart rate variability, it's actually the opposite. And a lot of people, it's very curious. And to me, this is what we call a whole health biomarker, is that anything, and we talked about, the connection between health and stress, we be able to manage stress. So what happens when our body's stressed, right? And the stress can come from, as we talk about physical aspects, where poor sleep, poor diet, lack of exercise, we get sick, a pathogen comes in, and any kind of illness from that standpoint. We got to talk about emotional stressors, which is, life and work and relationships and the world events and these various things that can impact our stress levels, and social, being isolated or being socially uncomfortable, being around a lot of people. I mean, I want to be, have a lot of social anxiety. All these things cause stress. And when stress comes on, what happens is our heart rate variability goes down and our heart rate goes up. So it's an indication that that's happening. The reason why we like heart rate variability more than heart rate is that it's significantly more sensitive to stressors of life. So you see much bigger, earlier changes in heart rate variability than you would in heart rate, and see the impacts of the things that happen. Where if we're in a healthy state, we exercise regularly, we eat well, we get a lot of rest, we manage stress appropriately. We all have stress, but we interpret it in the right way, and we're okay being around people and have good, strong relationships. We see that our heart rate varies significantly.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, this is a phenomenal indication of how well is this person doing from overall. Right? If all these things were equal, our physical stressors, our emotional stressors, our social are all equal under one umbrella, how are we doing?
Yeah.
And then with that information, we start to dive into these various aspects of the biological, the psychological, and the social well-being of individuals. Like, well, if our body is in a stress state, where is it coming from?
So, okay, so a couple of questions. When you go to the doctor and they check your heart rate, or you go to the emergency room and they check your heart rate, that is different than the variability?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So early on research, what it was done in space with a lot of the astronauts in regards to looking at their stress levels up there. It was used very heavily in neonatal research of looking at the stress of a fetus or a baby, to look at that. Also, to a degree that they looked at people that had heart attacks, where they found that people that had higher heart rate variability were less likely to develop a second heart attack, and actually had a better prognosis leaving the hospital, the higher the heart rate variability was. And this started to look into the mechanisms as to why that was happening. And so a lot of researchers got into psychological, where we know people that have depression, anxiety, PTSD, all these things come with lower variability, the more severe that it is. Same with isolation. When we talk about our relationships, there's something, a book called The Polyvagal Theory by Stephen Porges. He talks about we are social beings and how our nervous system is wired into that. That sometimes when you walk into a room, you can feel the vibe sometimes of like, this isn't a place that I want to be able to be in. Just walking to feel that connection of other people and what they're giving off and that side of things, or talking to individuals. Like, I don't know what it is, but I don't trust this person, right? And your senses are aware you're experiencing a threat, which is a stress state. So we go into that. So all these areas come into our nervous system to be communicated through it. We can capture that through heart rate variability, which it's a phenomenal tool.
So let's just get some basics.
Yeah.
What should an average heart rate, HRV be for the average person?
Yes. So the research for a long time was very convoluted in the fact there was different metrics, because we have well established that beats per minute is what we know is for heart rate, right? There's other ways to calculate it. We can look at, again, how many beats with current in 30 seconds, or how many abnormal beats can happen. There's many ways to calculate heart rate. So heart rate variability is on the same thing, where there's a lot of different statistics out there. Now, what's great is the fact I think we've relatively agreed upon one statistic that gives us a representation of heart rate variability. You don't have to memorize this. I haven't memorized the equation, but just if you want to look at any kind of numbers, it's called the root mean square of successive differences. So all you have to know is that it's RMSSD. So all the numbers that I'm going to suggest is based on this specific value, because this is what all the wearables that are on and smartwatches on the market, this is the statistic that they represent. So what's a good number? When I have dealt with Olympians, high-level athletes, things like that, typically you're in the range of about 80 to 100. That seems to be very good, right? And that's in milliseconds. Now, people that I deal with in regards to functional illnesses, people that have cardiovascular disease, any type of like cancers, things like that, you're looking at anything typically under 30, sometimes under 20 milliseconds.
Okay.
So what happens? Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so the high athlete is going to be 80 to 100. The one that's going to be struggling a little bit, they trying to, they have the poor well-being.
Yes.
They're going to be going around the 30 milliseconds.
Yes.
Okay. And so I'm going to assume the average would be in the middle, like 60.
Exactly. You got it. And so very similar to most processes as we age, you start to see that decrease over a period of time, right? So you start to say that, people in their 20s, you're typically healthy, don't have a lot of stressors typically at that point. Their averages into that 60s into the 70s and that type of stuff. That's kind of where they're at. And you start to be able to see that decrease over a period of time. Or people in their 60s, their average is around 35 milliseconds, right? And that's we know is average. We kind of go through, but we know that we can mitigate that and keep that number high. Very similar to you if you look at another marker of longevity, which is they call VO2 max, or aerobic capacity. It's another metric where it's the people you see when you run on a treadmill and they have that mask on them.
Oh, okay.
Right. So they gather all this oxygen information of what's going on. And the more oxygen that we can consume and utilize, the longer, healthier that we live. And so, but as you see, if you look at averages, you see that number, decrease over periods of time. But we see that people that can keep it higher, they keep it above that average as high as they possibly can, live longer. They're happier, and they get sick less often. And so it's very similar with heart rate variability, is that I've had people that are super healthy that have heart rate variabilities, when they're in their 60s into the 70s and 80s, which is, they're doing phenomenal. And I've also had people that are, in their early 30s that are suffering from a lot of mental health issues, that their heart rate variability is in the 20s. And so you see that. But the goal is, from an overall perspective, is that whatever the number is, we want to be able to maintain that or increase it as much as we possibly can from there. But it depends on many things. So, for instance, I'm not dealing with any health issues right now, which is great. I have a good HRV number. Awesome. My goal is to keep it there. Where some people will come into me and they have something. They have depression. They have fatigue. They have diabetes, something that's necessarily happening with them. And their heart rate variability is in the 30s. Okay, we want to be able to get that up. The better we can manage our blood sugars, our heart rate variability increases. The more that we exercise, our heart rate variability increases. So anything that's positive for our health increases our heart rate variability, and we want to be able to try to maintain that and get it as high as we possibly can.
Okay, this is great information to know. So basically, let's say, I'm sitting here, I feel like I have pretty much a clear bill of health. I don't have any issues that I know of. The doc, from the doctor's standpoint, oh, your blood looks good. But I go ahead and, let's say, get a smartwatch or some type of measurements, and all of a sudden I see my HRV is low. Is that a trigger to let me know maybe something is happening inside of me and I should look deeper? Or should I just be like, I feel fine, let me just keep on living my best life?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would suggest is people that come in, they're like, well, I'm below average, right? I look at these results of these, say it's a specific wearable, and you look up to the point of like, okay, well, based on my sex and my age, where should I be? And you say, well, I'm below average of where I should be. I wonder as to why. There's a various hierarchy of looking at your health and well-being. And a lot of people that are lower, you got to look at truly what we call the biological, the psychological, and the social aspects of well-being. I'd say a lot of people that are surprised by their lower scores are doing great with regards to exercise. They're doing great in regards to their sleep and recovery. They're trying to be able to optimize it, and they're doing a pretty good job with their nutrition. It usually comes off on the psychosocial side of things. Whether it's their stress management at work that really gets them, or so there's something happening with their kids or their relationship with their spouse. It comes like their interpretation of the world around them. They're surrounded by a perceived threat all the time, right? And it can go subconsciously, because you think about the times of, you've gone through a stressful part of your life, and you go through it, and in the time you think, I'm okay. And then when you come out of it, what do you say? Oh man, was I stressed during that time? I can't realize it didn't, like, whether a poor relationship, whatever it may be, it wasn't that bad. Right? Like, and you start to realize those things. And so it's our own perception of our health and well-being sometimes is skewed. And so using a objective marker like heart rate variability gives an indication of that. Are we living our best life? Are we actually thriving, or are we just surviving? Is there something that I'm missing that I can go through? So it's not diagnostic to a degree of like, oh, you're 25 years old and your HRV is in the 20s, you're going to have a heart attack tomorrow. Oh, it's not diagnostic in that side of things, but it should cause a level of investigation into your physical, your mental, and your social well-being, to making sure that you're doing all the right things.
Yeah. So it's allowing you to pause, even though you're like, I'm eating organic everything. I'm going to the gym 2 to 3 times, times a week. I'm doing all the check boxes, and then it's low. And then you're like, wait a minute, it's time for you to pause. Like, am I really dealing with my work relationships well, and whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
It allows you to pause when you look at the numbers and really say, am I suppressing stuff, and ...
Oh, for sure. And it comes down to, I have this long-term client that I've seen for a very long time in the chronic pain space. She's in her 30s. And I can tell you right now, we both know exactly what the trigger is for not only her pain, but high levels of stress, and why she has a low heart rate variability. It's the relationship with her parents. When that goes awry, everything goes awry afterwards. It is the trigger for her. She can do all the right dietary things, the right this, the right that, but this is what's holding back her well-being is the relationship that she has, and all the past traumas and current relationship, and what's going on and resurfacing. That is the biggest thing for individuals. The pain is just a representation. It's a symptom of this deep rooted well-being issue that needs to be addressed. And so what's great of this is she's now aware that she can mitigate the response, right, to the issue before it becomes full-blown. So we don't have those gigantic highs and lows anymore. We're more in this space where she can continue to function, still has highs and lows, but they're not as drastic as they were before, because we know what those triggers are. We know what can impact her pain, impact her stress, impact her anxiety, all those things. And we start to mitigate those things early on. So she has a significant amount of agency and control over her health and well-being.
Okay. Yeah. This is amazing to know that we have so many tools out there to just kind of like address things. I have a few more questions around this as well too. So will our heart rate HRV change? Let's say I'm suffering from like a cold, I have a runny nose and this and that, or I really did some intense workout and my body is sore because it's inflamed. Like, will that be changing my HRV?
Drastically. There's a direct connection of inflammation and heart rate variability. So we'll do a little science of the background. So the nervous system that we have is the sympathetic nervous system. So that in a stress response, it increases our heart rate. This is our fight or flight response, as we always hear. In the presence of a tiger, it increases our heart rate, increases our blood pressure. Our senses become heightened. All those things to perceive this threat. And then when our parasympathetic, our rest and digest system comes, it brings everything back down. It's like our brake system into that. What controls our brake is a big nerve from our cranium called the vagus nerve. And our vagus nerve has control over our body's inflammation. It's it's more activity, so it's more active. Typically, our inflammation is lower. When it's less active, our inflammation is higher. So there's a direct link between variability, and this vagus nerve is what actually drives our variability of our heart rate. So as the innervation goes to the heart, increases variability, we know that inflammation is down. So HRV goes up, inflammation goes down. We know that, which is absolutely phenomenal. So you're completely right. When you do a lot of exercise, your body's in recovery mode, you're doing all those things. Yes, absolutely. When you get sick, your immune system kicks off, right? Part of that is the inflammatory response. HRV is going to go down. The biggest one, I think, is an eye-opener for individuals. And I think for people that are interested in health and well-being, we know alcohol is bad. Not until you start to monitor your heart rate variability do you know how bad it actually is for you. I've actually got someone who is coping with chronic pain for 20 years with fibromyalgia that used alcohol as a coping mechanism. And she stated, I know it's bad for me, but it helps me, right? So that was a part of our first conversation where she's like, it's a way for me to be able to deal with the pain. We got her on monitoring heart rate variability, and her response was, I knew alcohol was bad for me. I didn't know it was this bad.
So it literally, her numbers would be like dropping so low.
Her numbers would be averaging into the 40s. It would go to 10.
Wow. Just from like having a night of alcohol.
Drastic changes in regards to that. It is now over a year that she's been sober. Because she was able to quantify it. She can see it in her, right? It's those things. Sometimes it's hard for people to look at that stuff. Like, again, we don't know sometimes that we're stressed. So we know we're stressed, but we don't know how bad it is. But if you start to be able to look at it and you can quantify it and become aware of it, you can mitigate that rebound effect that we all get from stress. To be able to make sure that we kind of, again, maintain a healthy life.
Okay. That's great to know, because a lot of times, especially in the culture we're in, it's like, we need to see hard facts. We need to see numbers, so what you say this and that, I need to see it on paper. So
exactly. It's the two different individuals. It's that objective and subjective. Some people, what they want is to be able to feel better, feel supported. Like, it's kind of that connection with an individual and be able to feel all those things. Other people, they need that data. They need that quantification type of system that's it's irrefutable in regards to what it comes through. So it helps with both of those aspects. A lot of things we do in health and well-being, especially in kind of the allied health or the alternative side of things, it's very subjective, right? You talk about dealing with pain or feeling better, energy. It's like, well, how are you feeling? It's all based on them. If we can support that with a biometric, it's more evidence that we're, people are like, oh, not only do I feel subjectively better, my health overall is improving. This is it's a win-win. This is great, right? Some people just don't know, and having this together is phenomenal for people.
It's so amazing. Earlier on, you had said beats per minute, BPM. And so if someone, after listening to this conversation, now they want to just start digging into this. And can you just break down the difference between beats per minute and the HRV? Because also with devices and things like that, they may be seeing this and thinking, oh, I've been monitoring my heart rate. Oh, I have that thing and it monitors and I'm fine. But could you just kind of like give the comparison of the differences?
Totally. So what BPM looks at is most watches, they'll take a small sample and kind of estimate how many beats would occur in a minute, right? So just take how many, like, so, the way that your heart is going right now, it's going to beat 60 times in the minute. If you start moving and walking, it starts to speed up because, okay, well, now it's probably going to beat about 100 beats per minute, right? In that time frame. It doesn't tell you when the beats are occurring, are they going boop, 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 boop. It estimates that time in that. It's an estimation of how many beats are going to be able to occur. What heart rate variability looks at is the actual time in between each beat. How quick does each beat actually occur, right? Is it fast? Is the millisecond short where it's very quick? Or is there a big gap in between the heartbeats? And so what we want to be able to see is that over a period of time is that we have this fluctuation of the time happens in between each of those beats. So the calculation one looks at, okay, well, based on this rhythm, it's going to beat about 60 beats in the minute. Where this one goes, okay, well, this beat occurred in 1.2 seconds, this one in 0.95 seconds, this one in 1.4 seconds, this one in 1.6, this in 0.6 seconds. And so we capture all of those. And what we want to be able to see is that we don't have a repetitive number. We don't want to see those numbers very close together. We want to see them varied apart. We want big time intervals in between these beats in a nice fluctuating pattern. So that's where the importance comes in. This is more of a sensitive biometric. So look at that. Yes, having a great heart rate lower is good, but it's not much of a predictor in regards to our health and well-being comparatively to something like heart rate variability.
Okay. So with BPM, how many beats is like per minute is like the average person?
So average out there in the literature, they always say is anywhere from 60 to 100. Now, we know high-level athletes, they're typically in the 40s, sometimes as low as the 30s, and super high-level athletes. Healthy individuals are typically in the 50s, right? People that are very physically active. And then kind of general health people are typically in the 60s, and then going higher and higher. And it's very similar, as we talked about. It's like, what's average, right? And we have this in the medical system of like saying, okay, well, if it's below 100, we don't need any medical intervention, right? As a person that's trying to optimize health and well-being, I don't want to see anything above 60. That tells me that that's where I want people to be.
Yeah.
Rather than I'm being okay because you're just not in a disease state. Like if I saw someone with a resting heart rate of 80, I'm like, what the heck is going on with this person? Right? We need to be able to make sure, like, why are you having 80 beats per minute where that is right in the middle of acceptable in regards to the medical system? Because there is no medical intervention at that point. But I guarantee you there's been years of that's creeping up and it's going to get there. And there's something under the surface that needs to be addressed now. It's not a problem at this moment, but it absolutely will be.
Now, okay. Thank you for breaking that down for us a little bit more. Now, can you do a comparison to comparison? So like HRV to BPM. So let's say the average person, like you said, you want them to be at 50 to 60, and then the average for HRV, would you want them to, will you be able to put them in a chart to see what both should be?
Yeah, I did this early on in my career. So I've been doing HRV for over a decade now. And I did this really early on. I'm like, can you almost predict based on someone's resting heart rate, what their heart rate variability would be? No. So how we described it in research is that there's not a lot of inter-person correlations, right? So, I can have 10 people with a resting heart rate of 60 beats per minute. I can tell you if it's going to be 80, 40, 20, 50, I don't know. But there's a lot of intra-person correlations, meaning the fact that if your heart rate goes from 60 to 55, you will have typically a higher heart rate variability, if that makes sense, right? So when your heart rate goes down, your heart rate variability will go up, but we won't be able to predict, if you and I and 3 of our friends come together and we all have 60 beats per minute, you would have zero idea what to expect from a heart rate variability standpoint.
So basically your resting heart rate or your BPM, when that goes down, the HRV should be going up.
Yes.
So it's kind of like they're going like opposite directions.
Absolutely. Yeah, you see that. That's exactly right. So within the person, that's what you would see, is that typically a increase in someone's heart rate variability results into a lowering of resting heart rate. Now, granted, you can have drastic changes in someone's heart rate variability going from like a 40 to an 80 with like a 3 or 4 beat difference in regards to resting heart rate.
Because it's measured by, you said, milliseconds?
Yeah, milliseconds is a specific way of looking at the variation. And so it's just significantly more sensitive to change than heart rate is. Heart rate is a little more, genetically determined in many different ways and based on your physiology and how things are. So it's a little harder to change that. It takes a lot longer to change that and a lot more interventions, where heart rate variability can actually be changed quite quickly over that time comparatively. So that's where, to me, it's such a more important metric to look at.
And now when we're measuring the HRV, now, because we're all different individuals, like you said, does age, like, I'm assuming that when you're putting all your input in, it's going to, analyze your age and things like that. Now, are children's rate naturally different from adult rates? Just as you said, high athletes may just be naturally different than a regular average person.
Yeah, what's interesting is the fact that, as we know, children, they have typically higher resting heart rates, right? And the reason why is because their heart's smaller, it's developing and that type of stuff, but they also have high heart rate variabilities in that case as well. Obviously, a majority of the research is not on younger children. A lot of especially when it comes to the accessible information from these consumer wearables, they don't produce any information under than 18 years old, just for legal purposes. So when you start to look at 18, yes, you see that downward trend. If you look at these companies, whether it's, you can look up heart rate variability in Fitbit, heart rate variability and Garmin or Apple, they'll have these trends that show you kind of what the average numbers are. And you definitely see that decrease over periods of time. Typically men and the younger ages have a higher heart rate variability that starts to be able to come together quite nicely by the time we're about 60-ish, 60, 65. It seems to be pretty darn equal at that point. But typically men at the early stages of life will have higher heart rate variability than females. But yeah, to me, it's and that's the thing, is if you're healthy, happy, you love life, love your job, you got great relationships, you have stress, but I love the stress that's involved. You're physically active, you're eating well, you're sleeping, you're like living your best life. Nothing indicates that anything's wrong. Your heart variability is a little bit lower. Great. Whatever that low number is comparatively, it's 40, 50, it's got to stay there. That's the number we got to be able to keep and maintain that.
Okay. And then how often does it update? Because let's say, you had a stressful couple of days and it's like, okay, it's been a crazy week out here, but now that event is over, all that stress and the load I was on, what's the average? Is it considering that you had a crazy 1 week out of every 8 months or something? I don't know.
Yeah. So what I've seen, so what's great about these new wearable devices is that how they measure HRV is through the night, right? So they take a bunch of your samples through the nighttime and they look at your average when you sleep. And that's the number they produce when you wake up in the morning to say, hey, what's my, how am I dealing with stress right now? Did I recover from it? Am I not? What I've seen is that for every day that you have a high stress event, there's about a day of recovery needed to be able to get back to baseline.
Okay.
It seems to be about, everyone's individual, but that seems about be the reaction. I'll use a personal example that I'm not super proud of, but I went with some friends to Ireland for a week. And obviously there's many Guinnesses were had at that point in regards to beers. And I had, my heart rate variability was extremely low for the entire week. When I came back home, it took about 7, 8, 9 days for it to be able to kind of get back to that normal range. It took that long for me to get back to normal. Now, that was, a stressful, physiological stressful event that I went through for those 7 days, but it was able, it took about those 7 days to be able to come. And that's typically what we see when you have a high stress period where you start to see these lower heart rate variability results. It usually takes, for every day that happens, about a day of recovery.
Okay. Good to know. Now we know age and, could vary. It's now, does it also vary by race and weight and all that type of stuff as well too?
Yeah, race not as much. There's not as much discrepancy in regards to race, but in regards to weight, yes. People that have more excess body fat typically have lower heart rate variabilities. That seems to be a commonality into that. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit of non-modifiable factors. The biggest ones, I would say, from non-modifiable is going to be age. It's going to be sex. And it's going to be your family genetics, right? So anything you're predisposed to that comes through in that sense. Like, again, if you have a family history of a lot of cardiovascular disease and happens quite rapid in regards to that, more the nature versus nurture. So it's more nature on the side of things. You're typically going to have probably a lower heart rate variability from that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a heart attack or you have to be in poor health. But it gives you those things. And so what I try to focus on with people and try to put these things into buckets for people of saying, okay, well, what's like your HRV is low. Okay, great. What are things that we can't change? Right? There's certain things. For instance, new parents have kids that, wake up. Okay, well, you can't control that. Sleep is modifiable, but your sleep is in the non-modifiable bucket right now. So we can't focus on that because it's not in your control.
Yes.
Right. So, and then we got to go, okay, well, what are the big modifiable things that we can do? And we break them down into the biological modifiable factors, psychological, and social. So the biological ones we know, which are sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Those are the big modifiable factors. Then we comes to psychological. We look at emotional regulation. How well do you control your emotions? Your mind-body connection or interception, right? Are you disconnected from your body? Or are you connected? Are you aware of these signals? Again, in type A personalities, we talk about the suppress, ignore. We have an assessment that we can look at your amount of mind-body connection you have, and people that decrease in that definitely have susceptible to chronic pain, anxiety, and poor health outcomes. We look at your thought awareness. Do you magnify or ruminate about problems? Right? That's another thing we have to be able to understand, because that's a big problem. We look at your purpose in life. Do you feel you're fulfilling something? Do you have a purpose for being here?
Yeah.
Right. Into that. You look at self-acceptance. Right? Are you happy with who you are? We look at our agency. Do you understand that you're in control of a significant of your health outcomes? There's a significant role that you can play. Do you feel you control, or you feel you're out of control, where you have no impact on your day-to-day life? And we look at your connections, your relationships with people. So we assess all these big areas for individuals, and we have a really good picture of, okay, well, what's the low-hanging fruit here?
Yeah.
Where do we need to build address? Because each one of those areas is going to have not only a drastic impact on our health, our well-being, but also our heart rate variability.
Yeah, you know what? I'm so happy that you brought awareness to all of that, because a lot of times it's like, let me eat a salad, let me just drink more water, and bringing, and I feel like we've, went around that a few times, just that reminder that, it's deeper than just thinking you're going to do the stuff on the surface. It's stuff that you, like you said, emotionally handling things and so on like that. So I'm sure people are sitting here and they're like, okay, I want to dig deeper into this HRV. Like, I need to know what my number is. So you were saying that a lot of times these devices do it at nighttime. So so let's first just list off what are the devices? What's the options of like doing it on our own? And also, when you do that, like, how long does it take for it to like start to like figure a number out?
All great questions. So the easiest way to get started is so the easiest way is there's a mobile application called HRV for training. I think it's $10. You don't need any pieces of equipment. It just uses the light and camera on your phone. It looks at the pulse going through your finger, and you're able to get an accurate heart rate variability at that time. Now what happens is how you do this is you wake up in the morning. You go pee if you have to go pee. You come back, you lie down, and you open the app, you put your finger on it. It usually takes like 60 seconds to get a number, and then it gives you your number for the day. Super simple, easy way to do it.
I mean, like, yes, a lot of times we do have to pee in the morning, but what about if you don't pee? What happens?
Yeah, then it's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
but peeing is important because you said it. So I'm like,
Well, yeah, because if you're sitting there kind of like, oh, I gotta pee, it's like your stress
oh,
response.
okay, you're bringing okay the anxiety.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an easy way. If you're active and you have a heart rate strap that's kind of Bluetooth enabled that can pair with your phone or a watch or whatever it may be,
Mhm.
there's a free app called Elite HRV. This pairs with your heart rate strap, and then you can use that together to be able to get a morning reading, a morning readiness reading. So you just open the app, you put your heart rate strap on, you press go, it does a 60-second reading, and then you get your number for the day.
So now
So
the heart rate strap, is that going around your heart? Like, I
yeah,
mean,
it's like Polar is typical, the one that is a company that has it, or Garmin or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's just a strap you put on. It's a flexible strap that goes around. It usually
okay.
has a little sensor at the very front, and be able to pick that up, and you can use that as well. So that's another way if you
You just
have one
use
of those
it
things.
for a
Sorry.
quick moment. You just use it for readings. You don't use it like when you're working out and stuff like that.
You can. It'd be the same one if you want to use that, right? So some people that are individuals that are active and they have a heart rate strap. Some people do to see what their heart rate is, and it pairs with their watch or whatever. You can, if it pairs with your phone, you can use Elite HRV to be able to determine your heart rate variability,
Okay.
which is great.
Mm-hmm.
The most popular way now is through either smartwatches or wearable products. These are things like the Apple Watch, Garmin is a big one. So there's smartwatches, so I'll start with those. So Apple and Garmin, those are ways to be able to do that. The higher, more expensive ones measure heart rate variability. The reason why some of the wearables don't is that to get heart rate variability has to be very specific. You're talking about fractions of a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very specific. And the quality of sensors now don't really pick up that sensitive information because it drains a lot of battery life. So if you interact with your watch a lot, if you want high quality information coming back, very accurate heart rate variability information, you have to charge your watch like every hour or two. But so they have a high quality sensor that does it. So it estimates it. And it's relatively, I mean, it's okay, but it's not great. But it's a way to start to look at some of the values. The other way we call wearables, and these are devices that you wear that don't have an interface, right? So sometimes you see just the straps that people wear, or for instance, like I'll show you this. It's called the Aura Ring.
Okay.
It's a little ring that has sensors inside of it. And then it pairs with my phone, and I get all my information through this wearable product. And the sensors are really good because it's just, there's nothing to interact with. It just uses the only energy drain is the actual sensors and information that itself.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have these products that provide high quality, high fidelity health information back. And these track both smartwatches and these wearables. They track primarily heart rate variability when you sleep, and then you can track heart rate during the day to give you a feedback in regards to your stress levels overall.
Okay, so we have a lot of options now. Do all smart watches do the HRV? Like, okay, so does Apple do it? The Apple phone, I mean
Yes.
Apple Watch.
Yes, they do. The only downside of it is that one of the things that happens is with wearables, they capture a lot of information through the night, right? So like they'll capture like 90 different data points, right?
So
So
that means you got to keep it on.
lots. Yeah, you keep it on, just put the ring on, you sleep, and it captures 9.
Well, I meant like the watch, because like I wouldn't want to wear a watch. I would take it off.
Exactly. Yes. And so, and this is another thing with people with monitoring heart rate variability. It comes to aesthetics. I want to make sure I don't want to wear rings. I want to wear a watch. I don't want to wear anything on my wrist. And so you got to look.
I mean, I don't want to sleep with a watch. Yeah.
Exactly. So with the Apple Watch, it only captures about 3 samples per night.
Mm-hmm.
Right, where it gives you some information, but it may not be super robust in that standpoint as to what's going on. So it depends on what you want to be able to do. Even Fitbit's got some cheaper wearables that can actually measure some pretty good, has a good amount of data from a heart rate variability standpoint. So if you have anything you would like to buy, right, whether it's an Apple Watch, a Garmin watch, a bunch of different watches out there, they would say heart rate variability in regards to the specifications or that type of stuff that it measures from there, which is obviously for me very important. but it depends on where you're at. If you just want it for activity, you don't necessarily need it. But if you want to do a deep dive in health and you're saying, you know what, I want to focus on me, my health, I want to know what I'm doing is actually benefiting for me, heart rate variability is a metric that needs to be included.
Yeah, because I think with the devices like the watches, I guess a person needs to also, like, let's say the Garmin, because I feel like I'm not exactly sure. You probably can confirm it for me because I did get a Garmin like 2 years ago because
Yeah.
I was running the marathon, but I don't even know what I was looking at. It was like all this stuff. I was like, I don't even know what's happening here. But I feel like when I was like looking at YouTube videos and stuff like that, they were saying like, oh, well, this one's cheaper because it doesn't measure your heart or something. I feel like that was a conversation. So even though you may say, oh, I'm going to get the Garmin, there are different versions. So some versions don't have the heart rate. I wonder if mine has it. I don't know. I have to go charge it up. It's been
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Some do, some don't. It just depends on what
Yeah.
you want to be able to measure. I mean, some of them, say, hey, there's a fantastic GPS that does altitude, and so it's for hiking
Yeah.
in particular. There's this for that, and so yeah, it
You have to
depends.
be
Just because it's
mindful to look for
exactly,
the
very mindful.
HRV option
Yeah.
on the devices.
Hmm.
Okay. So, and then with your ring, because the ring seems like the most convenient,
Yeah.
because you don't have to worry about like, oh, I took it off last night and I didn't get to do my measurements and stuff.
Exactly.
Which one do you think shows the best results out of
Yeah,
them?
so
Like heart rate, the finger light.
yeah, to me, there's again, I have no affiliation. So if people, it's like, oh, I don't make any
Yeah.
money or anything in regards to these companies at all. But Aura Ring, that's what these guys are. So Oura Ring. They provide many different things. One of the things that they provide that I really like is it's not a lot of algorithms where it's like a lot of these numbers. It's like, oh, your stress score is 9.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, as a practitioner myself, I need to know what's in that information so I can make better
Yeah.
decisions. It's almost like to a doctor, there's bad cholesterol and good cholesterol. If they just go, your cholesterol's 6 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is that good? Is that bad? Is like,
Yeah.
if it's not good, how do I improve? I don't know because I don't know
Yeah.
what's in the calculation. So as a practitioner, it makes it very hard for me when I have a lot of these algorithms. I don't know how to improve the number that people are concerned about. So these guys don't hide behind that. They show if there's any type of algorithm, they show you exactly what goes into it, which is phenomenal. Not only that, is they produce a lot of research around what they do. They actually go out there and they say, hey, we have sleep staging. We can see, look at deep sleep, REM sleep, light sleep. How does this compare to the gold standard equipment? And let's show everybody it. So they
Mm-hmm.
go out there and show they're trying to be as close to the gold standard as possible. So I like that aspect of it all, that they're striving to provide a lot of credibility around their wearable product, as well as the fact as a practitioner, it's a lot of information that I can utilize to optimize with my patients. And the fact that it's pretty sleek, it's pretty small, it's very
Mm-hmm.
lightweight, and so it's to me it's if anyone recommends, if they said they don't care about aesthetics, whatever the one you go with, I'd absolutely go with these guys.
Okay. But like for readings, like let's say the Apple Watch over the chest rate monitor, people may be like, oh, I want the chest rate because it's right on my heart. So it know what it's doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So the most credible one is if you get a heart rate strap. So if you're physically active and you want to be able to be able to monitor your heart rate with your exercise and things like that, get a heart rate strap that can also use your phone. Use the Elite HRV app, which is a free app, and you can absolutely use a heart rate variability for that. That is the most accurate way. It is almost perfect correlation to an ECG. An ECG is an electrocardiogram, where is the gold standard to looking at your heart rate and heart rhythm. These wearables are pretty close. We're looking at, I'd probably say, 90, 93% in regards to its accuracy comparatively to the gold standard. So pretty good. During last holidays, my team called me the human cyborg because I had 4 different wearables on at the same time to look at how they were measuring things. And this definitely had a phenomenal agreement in regards to 2 other ones that seem to be a gold standard assessment as well. So it's a pretty good one to utilize for me.
And then what about the light for the phone?
Yeah, phenomenal as well. So the
Okay.
gentleman that runs that, his name's Marco Altini. He's a PhD in computer science, and so he's a athlete by hobby, but he's a data scientist by trade, and so he's all about data credibility. And so he's published the research around that camera phone, the HRV for training app. He's
Mm.
published the research based upon that, and it's almost as accurate as the chest strap now. So he's doing a phenomenal job with those things too.
Okay, okay. You came over here and slayed us with the information. So I really appreciate that. And I'm so happy to be stepping into this new year with this new wealth of information around HRV and just having this understanding and knowing I have another option of looking at my health overall. And so I'm assuming you can work with clients virtually now because of the fact that we have this. We
All
have
this, yeah,
yeah.
because of honestly, even before COVID happened, I was doing a lot of consultations like this where people would send me their information and data. I'd ask for their blood work. I'd do this type of stuff and be able to develop these plans and these action plans I can follow along from a distance. Whether again
Yeah.
they're Australia or in Germany or relatively locally here, I can do the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, yeah, we get these numbers and be like, okay, I'm a 40. What do I do with this? And so it's great to know that we have options and that we have a practitioner like you to be able to help break us down and give us an action plan to say, like, because it's like we have this information, but it's like, now what?
Exactly.
You're the now what person. Now what?
I'm the now what? Yeah.
Now what? So yeah, so I guess we have all of your information in the show notes, but you can say in case someone's a pen writer, you can go ahead and share your information now before we
Yes.
close out the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I just launched a personal website there. I'm writing some free ebooks for individuals about what is HRV and some tips to be able to improve it. So stay tuned to that and you'll see some things coming in the near future around that. If you're curious about anything to that, again, I'll have information on wearables and what we can do from there. If you're already measuring heart rate variability and you say, hey, I want to be able to improve it, you can definitely reach out and work with me. I do a lot of virtual consultations with people and I take on a small amount of coaching people to help them through it all from there. And then if you already have a smartwatch or a wearable and you want to know, what area of my health and well-being needs to be addressed, I have a startup company. It's a free app. It's called Health QB. And what you do is it assesses these 10 factors that I kind of mentioned around health and well-being. We do this assessment and we help prioritize individuals. Like you want to make some changes in your health. Is it now time to focus on nutrition or my emotional regulation? Do I need to connect with people more or do I need to focus on my physical activity? So we prioritize these behaviors for individuals to make a meaningful impact to their health and well-being.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. Wellness for 2024.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's to
Yeah.
me, that's the word that I've been describing to people a lot more. Everyone says, be healthy. I'm like, wow, what does that
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's all really about being well, for sure.
Yeah, wellness. Beautiful, beautiful. But I can't let you go yet because you got to answer my personal question. And that is, what does becoming unique mean to you?
Yes, when I heard this on the other podcast and what you do and send me the show notes, prior to all this, what came to my mind about being unique is, and what resonated with that question is, you look at things now when it comes to health and well-being around diet. Diet is so convoluted, it's so dogmatic, it is so nuanced where we don't know what to eat anymore. Water's good, water's bad, meat is good, meat is bad, and all that type of stuff. And what it honestly comes down to is you knowing you.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding what you put in your body and how your body feels and how it reacts. You have to take that individual approach. Just because everyone says to do this one thing doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be great for you. Meditation could be phenomenal. Meditation can be devastating. Looking at deep-rooted trauma could be phenomenal, but it could also put people into a downward spiral and go in that side of things. So being unique is, to me, is taking a look inside, becoming aware of yourself.
Yeah.
And do a lot of self-discovery of those areas of health and well-being and finding the factors that work best for you. Don't take the thing where everyone's doing a keto diet. Everyone's doing high intensity interval training. Understand you and what you want to be able to accomplish? Does that meet your goals? And be happy with the fact that you're doing a lot of the self-discovery to be able to improve. Don't follow along what everyone else is doing. Don't follow the journey of many. Take
Yeah.
that individual approach and really do a lot of self-discovery of what makes you happy, what makes you have a purposeful life, and be able to drive that forward to improved health.
Yes, I love it. Don't follow the journey of many.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't follow the journey of many. You're individual. Yes, it's your journey, and it's up to you to, take the pen and write, and write your own book.
And it's super hard, but it's people like yourself that's really kind of motivating people and they make people understand that they can make a significant amount of change, and they have to empower them to do that. And yeah, it's great work. It's rewarding work. It's difficult work, but it's one by one, we'll be able to change a lot of lives.
Yes, I love that. I love it. Oh my God, you were beyond amazing. I totally appreciate you showing up for the Becoming Unique podcast.
Yes, thank you so much. I know podcasting is a lot of work. It's a lot of time, but you're doing a phenomenal job. Keep it up. You're having great guests on, so keep it going.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.